This is the Microsoft Cloud Show, episode 209, where today CJ and I are going to talk about the total eclipse across the United States, some container news, some Office 365 news, some Google news, and a little bit of a new Azure service, Event Grid, recorded live Tuesday, August the 22nd, 2017. The Microsoft Cloud Show is sponsored by Valid.nl. Valid's motto is stay ahead. Its mission is to enable its customers to excel in their business through the innovative use of IT. Valid is always on the lookout for new colleagues. Are you interested in all things happening in Azure, whether in infrastructure, SQL Server, Office 365, BI, SharePoint, or .NET? Look them up on valid.nl. Good morning, CJ.
How's it going, mate?
Oh my gosh.
You sure you know what day it is?
No, I feel like I've got a huge... No, I don't. I don't feel like I know what day it is. How's it going, man?
Oh, dude, I'm lagging. I'm going to need to be dragged through this show kicking and screaming. I'm having one of those weeks.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, man. I think we're both in production hell. So why don't you, what you've been up to lately, you feel free to share as much or as little of that as you like. I'm gonna be exercising that too.
I mean, I won't go into all the gory detail, but I'll summarize it as, why the hell have we got tables with 220 million rows in them?
And even when you want to throw the data away, how hard is that?
Yeah, it's surprisingly tough. So we inadvertently were not culling as much data as we thought we were. And so now I have some production database problems with query performance. And it basically comes down to one particular table with the incorrect indexes on it for the query that we're making, plus culminated with 220 million rows in it, is being a little bit problematic.
Oh, my goodness.
So we started, it's like one of those things where if you've got perf problems and you start trying to fix them, when you're dealing with a table that size, you often just make the problem worse.
Yeah.
So like one query I issued yesterday took 9 hours to complete, and I'm not even sure it worked.
Oh,
I'm not even sure it worked because issuing another query to find out would take ages too.
Man.
So yeah, it's a little problematic.
That's not fun.
But we're getting there. We're working through it.
Yeah.
So fortunately, it's not all that important. It's not sort of business critical to our service running, for example. It's really a big, long audit history that we archive out of our database over time. So that's not too bad. The problem is it's like you want to archive it, right? So you're like, cool, maybe we'll archive it if it was older than the last month. Older than the last month on a 220 million row table would require you to have good indexing on the date it was created, and that doesn't exist. So it's not quite as simple as delete from foo where created at, less than, now minus 1 month or whatever.
Well, it is, and if you come back a day later.
Well, so yeah, I came back 9 hours later, the query completed. For queries, much more complicated than that, but kind of similar.
Yeah.
In a nutshell, and the query completed, and now I don't know how to know if it did. And the database has been super busy trying to catch up after that query. So it's like, oh no, I'm not entirely sure. I'm in that sort of database purgatory right now.
That's not fun, man.
Fortunately, the app's working fine. Our service is running fine. It's some background processes that are sort of backing up that use that data and have been getting slower and slower. And that's what alerted us to this problem, was these background processes taking longer and longer to complete. So, yeah, that's what I'm up to. Fun and games, my friend. Oh, and I'm going camping tomorrow, so
you think?
I'll figure it out by then. Yeah.
You hope.
Well, at least, yeah, my wife and kids are going camping with or without me. Anywho, How about you? Hopefully your day's going a little bit better than mine.
It's not bad. It's just overwhelming. I guess
got a lot on.
Yeah, I'm working on. I had originally planned. I guess I originally had planned on releasing the first version of my course at the end of August, or a pre-release version of it. And I think that I kind of made this morning I've been mulling over the last 2 days, talking back and forth with the guys in my mastermind, and that's also doing similar stuff that I'm doing. And I've had an issue where I'm just trying to debate, you do that first release I want to make sure that what I release, there's enough content there that you say that this is a good first release. And even though I'm calling this a pre-release and I am going to sell it at a discount and it's not intended to be the entire thing, I still want to have that first release still to be something, that's substantial. And I'm kind of at a stage now where I think I just decided this morning, I'm like, you know what? I think I need to push it back a bit, because even though I'm releasing a car without an air conditioning and a radio and stuff, it does have to have 4 wheels in my mind, not 3 wheels. And so I feel,
yeah, totally.
So I think I'm pushing it back, and instead of being a end of August release, I think I'm going to be looking at, probably the week before Ignite is what I'll be looking at. Right now I'm looking at September the 19th is when I'll end up releasing it. But that gives me a few more weeks to get a bunch more chapters done and produced and stuff. But it's a matter of time right now. And then it's a matter of all the pre-release stuff that you'd want to do for a brand new startup, making sure the workflows are set up for talking to people in a pre-release campaign and teasing it out and generating interest and all that kind of stuff. So that's been the last few hours, and it's just been, I don't know, it's frustrating, it's disappointing because I want to get it out there, but I also don't want
But you want it to be good too.
Yeah, I don't want to rush it. So that's kind of where I am.
Okay, folks, you heard it here first. Ignite, AC will have his release done.
It better be done by Ignite. I definitely don't want to release at Ignite.
Yeah, you can't be going to Ignite without it done.
Yeah, it'll be done by then. It's degrees of doneness. There you go.
There you go. That's right.
We got a handful of news things we want to talk about today. I have a little bit of stuff that I want to share, some techie kind of stuff that I think some people might be interested in. I guess as a bit of a recap here, though, yesterday was the 2017 total eclipse across parts of the United States of the sun. You got to experience this a little bit yesterday, even though you weren't in the total eclipse path, were you?
Totality zone. No, we were a bit further north than we needed to be for totality. Totality passed through Oregon, basically. So we're up here in Seattle. So we got, I think, 92% coverage. It was really cool. I got to say, kids really enjoyed it. It was so super straight. I experienced one when I was 6 years old, when I was living in Papua New Guinea, and when I was really young, so I didn't really remember it very much. I remember going and watching it, and I remember building a pinhole camera to view it, all that sort of stuff. So I remember seeing it, but that's very sketchy memories. So it was kind of fun to experience. The kids were really interested in it. They wanted to know about the science behind it. They wanted to know, what was going on and how it worked and all that sort of stuff. And it got pretty dark. It didn't get completely dark, but it got sort of very 5 a.m. dawnish kind of feel to it. Eerily silent. Everything went really quiet. The birds got all confused. It was kind of cool. It was interesting.
Yeah, I wish that I had...
In a strange twist of fate, it was perfectly clear here and not so much for you, sadly.
Yeah, it's a bit ironic, right? So I live in the Sunshine State, and Florida. We're about 5 hours south of where it crossed back over into the Atlantic. It's 5 hours south of Charleston, South Carolina. And it was fine when the morning started. It was fine the day before. It's beautiful, sunny today. And about 3 hours before eclipse came around, we got cloud cover came in, and then really thick cloud cover. And it got a little bit darker during the eclipse. We were at about where we were. Well, had the clouds not been there, we were about 91%. So about like you, but I watched the solar eclipse on the NASA TV, which they did a great job streaming it. But it was a little, as a space geek, I was a little disappointed. Not disappointed in the eclipse. I was disappointed in my experience. So
sure.
At any rate, apparently we do get a total eclipse though, here where I live, but it's not until 2198. So I'm not going to be around, I don't think.
Oh, I don't know about that, man.
Still working.
Your consciousness will probably be in a jar somewhere. I'll dig you out of the archives and plug you back in for that one.
Oh, you'll be around, huh? Okay. Got it. Yeah. So I do have a link that I'm going to put in the show notes from NASA's pictures of the day. Definitely go take a look at it, man. There are some really, really cool pictures that are out there. The one I'm going to link to, it kind of puts you right in the middle of a bunch of other ones, but it's a picture from the space station, and you can see the dark spot on the Earth. And then there's other ones, the animation showing it crossing over the Earth. I thought it was pretty cool.
Yeah, there's some amazing photographs taken. One guy managed to get ISS going across the sun during the partial, and that was pretty incredible because that thing flies by. You get 3 frames or 2 frames to catch it or something.
Yeah,
that was pretty incredible. I thought that was pretty awesome.
But that goes,
and we're all still here, and and the tides were kind of crazy in certain places. But yeah, I guess we have to wait for the next one. Or go somewhere else in the world where another one happens sooner.
Exactly. Yeah. What was it? 7 years it goes across like Texas, goes across Dallas, I think.
Oh, only another 7 years?
Yeah, in 2024, I think is when it is. It goes from like Texas up to like the northeast of the US up into Canada. Or other way around. I'm not sure. Yeah, I think that's where it goes.
Yeah, gotcha. It happens reasonably frequently. You just got to be in the right place to catch it.
Yeah. So
at least they've got the maths nailed, and you know when, down to like a tenth of a second when it's going to happen. So
yeah, that's cool.
It's orbits, yo.
I got some other stuff for you though. I got a little bit of other 2 bits of nuggets here. One, I spent a bunch of time with Application Insights. I shouldn't say a bunch of time. I spent about 4 hours with it over the weekend. And I hooked up App Insights not only to the Voitanos site, it was already hooked up, but I also have the different services that I'm using to support Voitanos, one for payment, one for video delivery, one for subscription management, one for like my membership / email management. All of those different services publish webhooks. And so I set up an Azure function that would universally pull those things in. And whenever events were happening within those, it actually publishes those as custom events over to my App Insights. So I can see not only activity on the website, but I also see activity between these different services, and then hooked up Stream Analytics so that the data that's coming out, I have for like a user, I can see like all of their activity. And the cool thing was I did like all of this with probably about 30 lines of code total. And
that's awesome.
Yeah, and it's not costing me much money at all. So I know how I want to use it. I wanted to make sure that I was capturing stuff and being able to see activity when I do go live and right now. But I have plans to use it to be able to use that stuff later. So I can see like when someone's watching a video, it calls back to App Insights and says, they've started the video, they've stopped it, they've paused it, they've gotten to 25%, 50%, 100% of this specific video, all that stuff. So it's pretty cool.
That's nice.
Yeah, it's really nice.
Yeah, I guess it's good to have all that telemetry in one spot, right? So that then you can sort of slice and dice it. And you don't have to go gather it all up from a bunch of different places and normalize it and put it all together and stuff.
Yeah, what's nice about it too is that, App Insights comes with a lot of stuff right out of the box. But what I really like about it is that you can set up continuous export to where it dumps everything to a couple different folders in a container in a blob. And you can then go back and process those things later. So that's how Stream Analytics works. It watches that blob for data coming out.
Gotcha.
App Insights only keeps the last 90 days. So with that, plus there's an advanced like query language you can use with App Insights, and then I can process the data later. And it's just nice because data coming from 4 different services, plus my website, plus activity on the website and some other stuff is all being aggregated in one dashboard. And I can use App Insights out of the box to get information and then later can do more stuff with it. So yeah, that's the cool part.
Yeah, that's really cool. Hey, just watch how many rows you put in there.
Oh yeah. Hey, that's the cool thing. They're blobs. I have one blob that's got, I think, since I launched the starter course, I went and looked at it and I think there's something like 23 million actions that have happened from one of those services. But the cool thing, it's an Azure blob, and so it's got 23 million files in it, or 23 million items in a queue that are just waiting to be processed. So
nice.
One other bit of thing here that I do want to share, people who are SharePoint framework developers and who are also have been interested in the Angular 4 story. I have a bit of good news here. And so more is coming on this, but I spent about an hour with Google last week using existing, let me be careful how I say this, using existing APIs that are part of Angular 4. Step back a bit. Last week I was at SP Fest, or 2 weeks ago I was at SP Fest. I can't remember which one it was. And someone had a session, Sebastian, I always mess up his last name, Levert, had a session where he showed using Angular 4 inside a SharePoint framework. His approach is really cool. It does result in a payload of about 1 meg, and we were trying to look if we can go through and shrink it down. But the problem is that it's dynamically loading, creating a module on the page with as many of the different components you have on the page. So if you have 2 Angular 4 web parts, it's got to dynamically create the module and then load it in the page. You can only have 1 module. The challenge with that approach is that while it gives you the ability to have multiple web parts on the page that are built by different people in different projects, the downside is there's no way to do these advanced kind of optimization things with the payload with Angular. So you have to ship the whole Angular framework. So it makes the payload big. Well, last week I spent a week with the Google guys, and we they had built out a proof of concept for some other stuff that it looks like I'm going to be able to use it for the SharePoint framework. So stay tuned for my blog for something on this. But we were able to get a working Angular app running at about 40K, and the Angular piece of it was only 39K. The app itself was 1K. So you got 39K for Angular. That would be in every single project. But if you're building a web part,
that's
the thing,
nice, dude.
Yeah. So it looks really cool. There's some stuff that it would work today with existing APIs, but there's some stuff that needs to be done to make it a little bit cleaner, stuff a little bit less rough around the edges. So it's promising work around Angular 4. So we're in good shape.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Now,
that'll be exciting for the Angular devs with their SPFX, right? Because this has been a bone of contention and pain and suffering for a while.
It has been. It really has been. Now, I got one more thing that I definitely want to call out before we jump into the news. I have a few links that will show, but the one that I definitely want to talk about is we have had one sponsor with us since day one. Then when we started doing sponsorships, and Valid has been with us since day one. And I just wanted to do a nice little shout out. Thank you very much for them for sticking around and being with us for as long as they have been. I think they're going to take a little bit of a break. Hopefully it's just a little bit of a break, but I could not thank you guys enough for being involved in helping this show be what it is with your support.
Yeah, absolute. Big shout out to valid.nl. They, like you said, been with us from the beginning. First sponsor on the show. We would not be able to do what we do and continue this without their support, without all of our sponsors' support, obviously. But in particular, Valid for taking the plunge really early on and sticking with us. So we really appreciate it. We hope to see you back at some point soon, but yeah, we owe a lot to them. So yeah, thanks again.
Absolutely. Give CodeShip Pro a try. More teams than ever are using Docker and Linux for their .NET applications. CodeShip Pro is a fully customizable, continuous integration and delivery service in the cloud with the best support for any team that is using .NET and Docker together and can run builds on Linux environments. CodeShip Pro comes with ready-to-use integrations for Azure, including Azure Container Service and more. It also offers a free, convenient local CLI tool that allows you to run your builds locally and is the only hosted CI/CD tool that lets you build your own environment, giving you the most control and flexibility no matter what tool or stack you're trying to use. Check out CodeShip Pro's free plan that grants 100 builds per month, unlimited projects, and unlimited users. Open source projects are always free on CodeShip. Visit codeship.com today or check out codeship.com/features/pro to learn more. All right. CJ, you ready to go get some news?
Let's do it.
All right. So why don't you kick us off here? How'd you like to take one of these on? We got a handful of links here that we definitely want to run through.
Yeah, why don't we start with some of the squishy number-based ones? Docker are raising money. It looks like they are trying to raise funding at a $1.3 billion valuation. Yeah, so that's pretty exciting. What's interesting about this is there's a guy who's the CEO called Steve Singh, who used to be the CEO of, I think, Concur.
I think you're right.
In Bellevue, I'm pretty sure. And they bought TripIt, which I used to build. Well, yeah, I don't build it anymore, but I used to build an app for TripIt. So I researched TripIt, and then especially when Concur bought them, and I've heard about Steve Singh. I actually met him while I worked at Microsoft. We were doing some stuff with Concur on the Office team, and managed to meet him. Great guy. But anyway, he's in this post talking about raising money, and it looks like they are raising $75 million to help form a sales and a marketing team. Now, here's what I find not funny about this, but kind of moderately entertaining, is that all of these Valley startups, or all of these sort of free and fancy startups, and I don't know what the right word to call them is, non-traditional enterprise startups, let's put it that way, all face this problem where they get really popular in the ecosystem and they sort of start being used and all this sort of stuff. But to make money, to crack the financial nut, so to speak, they've got to get into enterprises and businesses, and in a big way, not just grassroots, like devs tutoring around with it and playing, right? I mean, like, go sell big deals into enterprises. And to do that, you need a sales and a marketing team. And so they all come up against this big wall, and eventually they got to go build a big sales and marketing team. And Box had to do this in a massive way. And that's why they were still losing money hand over fist to this day is because they spend over $100 million a year on this enterprise sales team. And I just find it really interesting that these non-traditional enterprise startups get super popular at the grassroots, but end up hitting this wall. Whereas a lot of other sort of enterprise startups start with that notion of having to go sell into the enterprise from day one. And sales might be slower to start because of that, but it's sustainable. It's just really interesting, different approaches. Maybe that's the business owner in me looking at it through a different lens or something. I don't know. But anyway, so they're raising a bunch of money to hire a bunch of salespeople. That's what I took from this. And a $1.3 billion valuation, I actually think that's pretty light for Docker, honestly. Like $1.3 billion, they're powering a metric crap ton of the world's applications on the internet. Maybe that's overstating it, but a lot. That to me feels like a very strong moat that they've got, right? They can really leverage that base to go sell them other products. So kind of seems a little light, but hey, who knows? I guess $1 billion light. Yeah. Funny. What is the world we're in?
It's all funny money.
Yeah. It's nice to see them obviously doing well and trying to make a big push. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah. That's cool. That's very cool.
Positive moves for them for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the related to the container news, this one I'm going to be kind of quick here, that I think we mentioned it a couple weeks ago. GitHub has adopted Kubernetes for hosting a pretty good sized piece of one of their applications. So like they recently, over the last year, they've gradually evolved the infrastructure that runs Ruby on Rails app for most of GitHub and api.github.com. What they've recently done is they've migrated everything over to use Kubernetes that's deployed on top of their own. They call it their own Metal Cloud. It's kind of their own. They don't have stuff running in they call it Metal Cloud. You can read the post about it. One of the things that they recently put a blog post out on their engineering blog, just githubengineering.com, about Kubernetes at GitHub. And they talk about, first of all, why they did the change, why Kubernetes, and really their experiences on moving a mission critical application over to Kubernetes and some of the lessons learned and stuff. So it's a good post if you're looking for a little bit of Kubernetes love, if you're looking for a little bit of what containers and like what the behind the scenes kind of stuff is. It's pretty interesting to see what they've done here. So yeah, cool.
Yeah, that's real world sort of case study stuff I find really interesting, especially on a site like GitHub, which is obviously one of the most heavily trafficked sites in our space, at least anyway.
Yeah, definitely.
Quick shout out again. I think I plugged this service on the show once before, but our good friend who's been on the show, Steve Peshka, has launched AzureServiceMon.com, and you can actually sign up for a 45-day free trial now. So, we don't get any kickbacks from this or anything like that. Steve, feel free to give us some if you feel like it. But
we accept advertising.
That's right. But definitely go check it out. He did Office 365 Mon is another service he runs for monitoring Office 365, obviously, and its availability. But he's applying the same sort of technology to Azure services as well. So you can monitor things like web apps, CDN endpoints, virtual machines, event hubs, HD Insight clusters, blah, 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 blah. The list goes on and on. But you can go get a 45-day free trial to help you get more insight into your Azure resources from a third party, not just from Microsoft. So yeah, go check it out, AzureServiceMon.com.
I'm going to continue a little bit with our Azure news here and talk a bit about a new Azure service that was released. Now, I'm searching out someone to find someone, probably may even happen at Ignite, to come on the show and talk a little bit more about this with everyone to get a little bit more detail. But Microsoft last week announced a new feature called the Event Grid in Azure.
Yeah, this sounds so cool.
Yeah, this is like, as there's a site called, or a news organization called the News Stack, and it says that they wrote a pretty good write-up on it. It says with Event Grid, Microsoft provides the missing half of Azure serverless computing. So explain a little bit about what this is. The idea here is it's quite simply, it's a pub-sub model between Azure services. So what you can do without writing any code is they are taking different resources inside of Azure and they are creating them or enabling them to be publishers of events. And then you can take those events that are being published and you can then hook those up with things that can handle them. So in the picture that's floating around quite a bit, a list of some of the publishers that are out there are blob storage, resource groups, Azure subscriptions, event hubs, or even a custom topic. And then some of the common event handlers that you could use to take advantage of this are Azure Functions, Logic Apps, Azure Automation, and Webhooks. Now, I think that Corey Sanders, who's with Microsoft, had a blog post announcing this, and he had some pretty good stuff to say inside of the post, and that was also quoted on the news stack. So let me read this because I think he does a really good job of explaining kind of where the value add here, what the benefit here is, what it's really having to offer. The thing here is that these ads, so I'll quote him now. These events are completely decoupled from the app platform. Event Grid is more than just a standard pub sub system because of the breadth of services covered by the platform. Also, because the events are first class, which means that you have direct control over them, including filtering around prefix or the event type. You can control and configure a set of filters that can easily decide which events to listen and react to in your code. And what the benefit is, I added that emphasis. Continue with this quote, that filtering is done server side, which means the complexity of the code you need to decide which events to react and respond to is dramatically reduced, end quote. This is really slick because now you can hook up when things happen in one Azure service, you can hook that up to have a handler do something based on whatever that was. You could have done this. Certain Azure services provided things like webhooks. That was the only way for us to listen to some of these different things that were going on, or to have it do things like, say, if it had integration with App Insights, and you could then publish over to App Insights and then configure continuous export and have those things dumped out to blob storage. And then you could use something like Stream Analytics to listen to that and then do any kind of processing or hand it over to a function or whatever. This is cool because it simplifies that process. There'll be more things you'll be able to kind of hook up these different pieces together to react to everything that's happening within Azure. And it starts to get a little bit more of the feel for me for a cloud at scale implementation of a BizTalk-like service that we used to know.
Yeah, gotcha. I mean, I think this is super cool because it makes it really easy to implement and subscribe to stuff. It reads to me like it's Service Bus, except with a bunch of automatic publishers that are putting messages on the queue and a bunch of event handlers responding to messages on a queue. It makes me wonder, it wouldn't surprise me if they're using Service Bus under the covers to do this, because all of these, functionally, you can do all of this with Service Bus, right? You can pop things on them, you can pop messages on a queue, and you can filter based on topic and all that sort of stuff, and you can respond to things on a queue. But what they've sort of done is, it looks like, have wrapped that and sort of abstracted away the implementation of having to know how to put things on a queue from one of your sources, right? Event publishers. And they've provided those publishers for you from their own services like blob storage and what have you. And then also sort of abstracted away the need to know how to consume things off a service bus to trigger events in your system, like a function or a logic app or whatever. And they've built those handlers that automatically can subscribe to those things and then, fire your function or whatever. So arguably you could have built all of this yourself, but who wants to do that really, right? If you can use an out-of-the-box service to do it, that's pretty cool. So yeah, if anybody's listening to this that built this or works on the service, we would love to talk to you because we'd love to know how you did it, where it came from. Was this something that you're using behind the scenes? Because in Azure Functions, for example, you've always been able to trigger a function based off something happening in a blob queue or in blob storage, right? Or off a queue or something like that. So I wonder if it got built for something like that to deal with that eventing type system. And this is kind of the next logical step.
Yeah, if you think about it like that, today in Azure Functions, you can, you can listen to like a queue, blob store, table, HTTP entry, and they call it a generic webhook, which is really just HTTP. So you've got like those 5 different things. It looks like what they've done is instead of having to go to all of these different Azure services like automation, like logic apps, like Azure Functions, instead of having to go to each one of these different things and having to add support for all the different Azure features, they just said, hey, you know what? We're going to add support for Event Grid, and we're going to have all these other things published to that one thing. So instead, not everything has to support everything else. Instead, they all just support one thing, and that one thing is the middle layer. And like you said, it probably is just like their own subscription to Service Bus, and they have all the queues, and they're just handling the routing between everybody.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. that's what it reads like. But obviously we'd love to hear more about the ins and outs of it and see if that is actually the case.
Yeah, so that's cool stuff.
Nice to see new services though, and especially ones like this that make it much easier to hook things together without code. That's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
Along similar lines, well, not similar, vaguely similar, I suppose, Microsoft are announcing or have announced the availability of Postgres and MySQL databases in India. So more expansion for those services. So stepping back for 1 second, Azure added the ability for supporting managed Azure databases for MySQL and Postgres some time back. And now they're adding availability of those services in India. So slowly sort of spreading around the world. If you're not familiar with these, it's kind of like how you would run just a regular Azure SQL instance, I guess, for want of a better word, in Azure, kind of a managed SQL instance. You can go do that for Postgres and MySQL as well, if those are your databases of choice. So make it super easy to get up and running with databases in Azure, not just SQL. Kind of pandering to the open source world that, want to deal with Mongo and MySQL and Postgres and all that sort of stuff on the Azure stack rather than having to run it all themselves.
Very cool.
Managed databases are interesting and everything. To me, it's sort of, I'm kind of, yeah. I guess with the boat I'm currently in, I'm probably not one to comment too much on this, but I am really glad that we have a lot more control over our database instances than managed ones right now.
Yeah.
Because we can go digging into all the ins and outs of what's going on behind the scenes without sort of wondering too much. But obviously that comes with a little bit of pain as well. So yeah, it won't suit everybody, but for a lot of purposes, it's great.
I have a question for you. And I'm curious because I bet one of our other developer listeners may be thinking about this. Related to your database issue, related to the whole managed database versus one that is more, that you own a little bit more control over, knowing how you guys do it. Is it an option for you to throw a incredibly big Azure box at this or to bump up to another level of subscription for your database for a 24-hour period or 12 hours just to be able to do like the cleanup at a much faster rate and then scale it back down?
Yeah, certainly. Yep. Yeah, so I guess a little bit more detail behind the scenes. We don't run a managed database from Azure. We run a Postgres cluster in Azure on IaaS, right? So we have full control over how many cores, how much memory, what disks are attached, the configuration of all those, how we do we have obviously a high availability cluster so that we've got redundancy and we can deal with downtime when we need to patch those servers and all that sort of stuff and our app stays up. So we have full control over all of that. But one of the things we can do is go add a new node to that cluster that's much bigger, let it catch back up, and then flip to that being the primary to take out old nodes that are smaller sized. And we can do that with a click of a button. So we could say, instead of, I can't even remember what the size of the machines we've currently standardized on. I don't know, for argument's sake, 4-proc machine with 32 gig of RAM or something like that, right? If we wanted to go to 64 gig of RAM for a few days or whatever, we could roll in new nodes. There would be a little bit of time, because it takes a little bit of time for it to be provisioned, obviously, a little bit of time for it to catch up to the current state, and then we can flip over to it. So we could certainly do that, yeah.
It's a capability that we just don't have in terms of the on-prem world, or that kind of elasticity, that kind of ability to kind of temporarily throw money at the problem instead of just trying to instead of being like boxed in on the hardware side.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of a halfway house between a managed database service and doing it yourself on-prem, right? We get some of the benefits of the cloud of being able to spin up new VMs really easy or new nodes for the cluster really easy. But also we suffer some of the pain of having to manage that ourselves as well. So kind of halfway between the two. But we also get some of the pros, right? The pros of that approach are not having to deal with hardware, obviously. But also we get a lot of control over those nodes that a managed service doesn't give you. So, but you got to wear some of the pain that comes with that. So
sure.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yes.
So let's see. I think we've kind of gone through all of our news items here. Did you have anything else? I think we went through all of them.
No, you want to yap about your doc stuff that you noticed recently?
Oh, yeah, sure. I did notice Google Docs, the G Suite, they updated Google Docs, Google Sheets, and Google Slides with a bunch of new collaboration features. Got a link here that's pointing over to TechCrunch article on this. One of the things that I've noticed, I mean, there's a few things where they've added in like they had an ability to do add-ons to documents or add-ons to sheets. They've added in some new templates here that are a little more robust. Like, for example, they've added new partners, LegalZoom, DocuSign. So the same way how the DocuSign capability we had in Office 365 for maybe 3 years now, 4 years.
Yeah.
They just added that in the G Suite. But one of the features that I thought was really interesting, which seems pretty simple, but when I heard it, it's like, oh my God, yeah, that would have been nice. So you know how when you can version documents or you can version stuff, so maybe it's a V1 or V2?
Yeah, you copy a document and you name it V2.
V2, yeah.
And then you name it V2 final and then V2 CJ's edits final. That sort of stuff.
Yeah, and when you had... when you turned on versioning, and even in SharePoint or in any of these other products that are out there and Google Docs, if you turn versioning on, it would keep a historical version of it, but it would just show you the timestamps. So Google Docs now... And
give you a version number or whatever. But
that's about it. Well, now you can actually give it a name.
It seems really silly and dumb, doesn't it? But it's kind of obvious. Why doesn't everybody do that?
Yeah. Draft. Pre-release.
Draft, final draft.
This is the
draft. AC's edits draft.
Draft of the pre-release. Draft of the pre-release. Draft of the almost release.
I love going into what cracks me up is I can understand that when you're using a file system. My doc V1, my doc V2. What cracks me up is when you go see it in SharePoint libraries. Right? And people don't know that you can version things. And maybe it's because you can't name them.
Yeah. I don't know.
Maybe somebody correct us if I'm totally wrong, but I don't think you can name a version in SharePoint.
No, you can't.
Yet, right?
No, it's either major version or major.minor.
So instead of 1, 2, 3 as the versions, or 1.1, 1.2, 1.3 or whatever, like you can do with SharePoint versioning, maybe they just go create my doc 1, my doc 2, my doc 3 because my doc 1 final, my doc 2 new final, because you can't name the versions.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Oh, it's funny.
Cool feature though. Nice.
It is cool.
While many IT teams struggle with the impact of deploying Office 365, Zscaler customers are experiencing 40% or greater network performance across file download times, as well as TCP and DNS connection times, compared to using next-gen firewalls and UTMs to route Office 365 traffic locally to the internet. While you may know Zscaler as the leader in cloud security, they also have hundreds of customers who are processing over 1.2 petabytes of Office 365 traffic monthly through the Zscaler cloud. Visit www.zscaler.com to learn more.
All right. I think that does it for our news today.
Certainly.
Do you
got some picks?
I do. I have 2 picks. Do you have any picks for us today?
I do.
Okay. You want to go first or you want me to go first?
Yeah, I can go first. No sweat. Cool. So do you know a guy called John Skeet?
I do know a guy named John Skeet.
Does that name ring a bell?
The C# guy.
Yeah. So he's a Google guy. I think he works for Google still.
He does.
I don't know. Maybe. I'm pretty sure he still does. Anyway, he's like the Stack Overflow god, right? If you ever post a question to Stack Overflow and get John Skeet answering, you've probably got the correct answer. Yeah. And 2, you really hope you phrased your question correctly because he has some epic takedowns. If you're a developer, and you're in the C# and .NET world, you probably know who John Skeet is. If you don't,
you're young.
Go look him up.
You're young.
He's super, really. I don't know him personally, but seems like a really nice guy. Very, very helpful on Stack Overflow. Anyway, he's the king of C# on Stack Overflow, basically, and wrote a library called NodaTime, which is basically, you know how every time you write an application that's got anything to do with date and times and multiple time zones, your life just becomes one of those painful sort of points in time where you just want to stab your face with a pencil, right? It's just, there's no way around it. It's just bloody miserable.
Yep.
But NodaTime is a library that helps you take all of that pain away. And it's basically the definitive way to deal with date and time in .NET. But anyway, so that has nothing to do with my pick. That's just John Skeet. He wrote a blog post called Using .NET Core 2.0 SDK on Travis. So now that .NET Core has gone 2.0, he's starting to play with compiling NodaTime, the NodaTime library, using Travis for CI and CD. So Travis is a is an online continuous integration build service. And so he's gone and done that with Notatime. And he's written up a blog post about how to get it working, and it's pretty sweet. So things have changed with .NET 2 in a nutshell, and there's a couple of things you've got to do with your Travis YAML file, which is like the config file for Travis, and something with your project file or something along those lines. Anyway, pretty easy to get your app now building up on Travis, your .NET app, which, how cool is that? Did you think you'd put those two things in the same sentence? Kind of crazy.
.NET and Travis, that's very cool.
Yeah, exactly. So, he wrote that. And, as soon as you read a John Skeet post, you're like, oh, okay, I should probably take notice of this because it's probably well done. Okay, that's one pick. The second pick, we've spoken about this on the show before because Keith Ritchie is the maestro behind our soundtrack. And recently, I think we've spoken on the show about this before, he's put out an album of new music, which has now been released. It's been finished and released as of August the 15th with a new album called Pillars in Time. And you and I feature on this album. It's basically a collection of music, I guess, or tunes, for want of a better word, which is sort of dedicated to the community around SharePoint and around his career and things like that. And there's a bunch of tracks on here, and they're sort of associated with different people in the community. And you're number 2 on the album with a track called Rocket Man.
Shocker. Very
poignant.
Shocker.
I also noticed that it's the longest track on the album.
Yeah, I'm a bit wordy.
You said it, not me. Although I am going on about this quite a lot. And then number 8 is Groupie, which is my one, which I thought was really hilarious because I was basically a Keith Ritchie groupie back in the day, and totally like fangirled out when I was in person for the first time. So it's aptly named Groupie, track number 8. But this is great music, especially if you're a developer. I love coding to this stuff, and so you should go check it out. It's called Pillars in Time. I'll link to the show in the show notes after the blog post announcing it. But there are others. Spence Harbar in here, Shups, Nelly Moj, Mike Fitz, Miguel Wood, Bob Fox, Morris Prather, and Sean, is it? Yeah, Sean McDonough, right? So everybody's and Jeff Teeper right at the end. How can I miss Jeff? His track is aptly named El Capitan.
Yeah. It's good. He's doing a really good job with this music. I'm glad you picked that as your pick. I was going to call that out. at the end too. That's cool to see you release it too. It's a good album. Have you listened to it?
Yes, I have. I haven't actually listened to all of the actual finished tracks. I listened to the whole album when it came out in beta, but I need to re-listen to all the GA versions.
Yeah, it's pretty good. It's good, really good work music. If I'm writing, it's fantastic. For coding, I prefer more like real high energy stuff. But for writing, it's fantastic. But okay, I've got 2 picks here. They're both very geeky picks. One of them is a code geeky pick, and the other one I'm going to go back to space. And the space one I think is incredibly fun. So anyway, let's go back to the code one. Great post here on Hacker Noon in the last few weeks. It's called Keep Your Bundle Size Under Control. Now here's what's cool about this. This is a Visual Studio Code extension that what you can do once you install this guy called import cost, when you do an import statement at the top of your JavaScript or your TypeScript file, over on the right-hand side, either on a require statement or an import statement, on the right-hand side, it shows you the size of the file that you're actually importing. So you can get a little bit of a visualization on what this is going to do to your final package that you're going to be building. So a couple screenshots shows you a few things of how it works. There are ways too, you can see to where instead of doing a full global kind of a require statement to go through and pull everything in, like say, a good example of this is RxJS. You don't pull in the entire reactive extensions library. Instead, you pull in specific components to it. If you pull the whole thing in, it shows you, hey, you're pulling in this gigantic thing. But if you say, required RxJS and then what the name of the operator is that you're pulling in, it shows you that you're pulling in a much smaller thing. So it's a really good visualization to see as you're going through and you're building your stuff to get an idea of what's being shown, what stuff is showing up inside of your application. It's a very cool add-in, free add-in for Visual Studio Code. So go get it today. Another thing I'm going to highlight here. This is a geek one. This is the start of a project. And I'm actually going to put both of these links in the show notes. This is really a two linker instead of just a one linker. But there's a guy. I found this guy on the SpaceX subreddit on Reddit. That you can't really tell his name, but his handle is.
What do you mean? I thought his name was Shahar603.
Yeah, Shahar603. So this guy, he's created two projects. So one of them, let's talk about what one of them is. One of them is called SpaceX. Now, what's cool about this, he's only got a little bit of data in there. He's got 3 different missions in there right now. But what he's doing is, I found it really interesting over the last SpaceX launch that happened in the last 2 weeks that went to another CRS mission going back to the ISS. This guy started posting a bunch of graphs of here's the stage 2, here's it going up, here's stage 1, here's it coming back. But it was stuff like here's the elevation or here's the altitude, here it is downrange, here's the speed, all that stuff coming back and forth about it. He showed a bunch of graphs of it, and he showed it all within about 3 or 4 hours of the launch happening. And so you're looking at like, wait a minute, how did this guy get this data? Because SpaceX doesn't publish all this data. This guy used OpenCV and a couple other tools. OpenCV used Python, an MPEG tool to watch the live technical stream and to screen scrape frame by frame the data that SpaceX shows in the top right corner of the video, showing the speed of the different elements of the first stage and the second stage, and using the timeline at the bottom to figure out what just happened. Was it the boost back just kicked in or whatever happened? And he takes all that and he's storing it all in the data to be able to take advantage, to see that stuff going live or, soon after and see these really cool graphs. So this is really cool, kind of techie thing using image recognition and computer vision to be able to do this. But the real cool part is the project that he's kicking off called Mission Control. And the idea behind this is going to be a website. Well, here, let me just read this out to it. The idea is that he wants to combine all of this into one cockpit-like mission control experience, one place with multiple windows that contains everything you want to do, completely customizable, community-driven, and expandable for free. Anybody can provide data. Anybody can build upon the data. Anybody can customize the data to view. Anybody can customize the experience or the interface. And so what's cool about this is collecting data live from rocket launches that are going off, and then being able to get your own mission control, sitting like in your own mission control environment to see all the different things, which to me, really timely, as today I just finished Failure is Not an Option book by Gene Kranz, who was the flight director for a lot of the Apollo missions. So this is really freaking cool.
I want one of these in my office on the wall. It's going to happen. There's no two ways about it.
Isn't this cool? It's really cool when he's standing up here. You can stand it. I want to spend a little bit more time here understanding what it is. But I mean, it's got, there's another guy like on Reddit. He goes by the Vehicle Destroyer as his handle on Reddit. And he's created something called Flight Club, which takes all of this data and creates animations for the flight. So you can see, like when SpaceX shows like the flight, the path of the rocket going up, and then when it does a boost back and come back, he's created all the animations and stuff and synced it to the audio and the stream and everything. Even after SpaceX goes off the air and showing the weather conditions and stuff, Flight Club is really cool, but he's trying to do a mashup of Flight Club, landing maps, coverage streams, graph analysis of flights that are happening on, recovery data. It's really, really cool.
So cool.
Yeah.
Dude, where do these people get the time? It boggles my mind. Like, I wish I had time to do this sort of stuff. That'd be awesome.
It's really slick. This is one of those things where if you were like if I was independently like
loaded,
I'm going to say self-sufficient, right? I don't need to be loaded, but if the money is not an issue and I don't have to work for the money, this is the kind of stuff that I think would be fun, is using your tech, experience and cool new tools to do stuff like this.
Totally.
Where you don't have to think about the stuff that doctors having to think about and how do you make money on selling this to the enterprise. I just want to do the cool shit.
Yeah. Why are you doing it? Because it's fun.
And because people like it.
That's right. Yeah, that'd be, wow, that's a cool find. I'm going to have to look into that.
It's early, but it's pretty neat.
Very sweet.
Awesome. Hey, man. Another episode of The Bag.
Boom.
Episode 209 is wrapped up. So, hey, if everybody's got any questions, please feel free to submit them to us either on Twitter at MS Cloud Show, or send them to us on Facebook, or just go to our site, drop a comment in the contact form. If you're going to be at Ignite, reach out to us. Let us know. We'd love to do something with everybody at Ignite. And if you have specific requests for Ignite, like people to go find and interview and such, let us know.
Absolutely. Yeah. And probably next week, we're going to detail what we're doing around the live show.
Yeah. Or in the next few weeks, we'll figure it out.
Yeah, we'll give you I don't mean like a minute by minute breakdown of what we're going to do. I just mean like some of the logistics, where it's going to be, date and time, all that sort of stuff.
We do know that we will be live streaming on YouTube and on Facebook, on our page on Facebook. So
yes, for those not there,
go.
For those that are there, we fully expect you to show up in person. We'll be disappointed if you don't, and be giving out some free t-shirts probably.
We hope so. I haven't heard back from the guy.
Possibly. Yeah. Okay, maybe I just oversold it.
We got stickers.
Still come.
We got stickers, and there's an audience of like 100 this time, like a huge seating audience that they have now. Not like last time, like 20 people.
Yeah, exactly. AC is going to give away tokens to his free course. I mean, that's not right. I'm just making things up.
As long as you put food on the table, I'll give you free access to the course.
There you go. Yeah. Nice.
Awesome.
All right, dude. Have a good one.
Yeah, you do the same, bud.
Cheers.
Did you like this episode? Please tweet about it and drop a 5-star review in iTunes. Word of mouth recommendations are the most effective ways for us to grow the show, and we'd really appreciate it. If you have a question for us, go to microsoftcloudshow.com/questions, where you can submit it as text or record it as a WAV or an MP3, and provide a link so that we can play your question on the show. Our theme music is brought to you by Keith Ritchie. For more information on Keith's music, head to music.kritchie.com. You can subscribe to us in iTunes and the Google Play Store by searching for the Microsoft Cloud Show, or via RSS at microsoftcloudshow.com, where you'll also find notes of each episode. You can also find us on Facebook, searching for Microsoft Cloud Show, or on Twitter at MS Cloud Show. And finally, sign up to our mailing list by heading over to our website and entering your email to interact with us, participate in upcoming interviews, and other cool stuff. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.